Hello everybody! Thanks for being interested in my video, in which I would like to show you one example of monthly reports that I prepare and share some ideas on how to efficiently present business results in Excel. You should know that these data are not real and they serve only for the purpose of this case. In order to understand this report, we should really quickly look at the organization chart of this imaginary company. I have it here. So this is a software development company which has 4 various departments here in blue, which work all together on 13 projects at the same time. So these blue departments and projects are profit centers who generate revenue and costs. And then we have supporting departments here in orange, management operations in general. And these are cost centers because they generate only costs. Okay, I hope this is clear. So now let's dive into the report, where we will focus mainly on the performance of the company as a whole and of these blue departments and projects, profit centers. Here on the first page we have dashboard showing us key info about the performance. Here in title we can see that data that are currently showed are for July 2020 year to date and in 1000 Swiss francs. However, this report is dynamic, which means that here we can choose the period we are interested in. But before I switch the period now, please keep in mind that currently here we have 7.6 million revenues. And here in comment we can see that it refers to first 7 months of this year. So if I switch to March now, what happens is that title changes. Of course, chart changes. Now we have only 3.3 million revenues, and comment changes as well. Here we can see that now it refers to Q1. And now before I explain this first chart, I would like to show you the whole P&L so that it's crystal clear what each of these items represents. And here we can go directly to whole P&L. So here we are on the next page. First, here we have an overview of revenue and EBT over months, this and previous year, so we instantly see what is happening over time. We can see, for example, that revenue in this year has been higher than last year all the time, which is not the case with EBT. That implies that our efficiency fell, and this is why here we have one extra red comment as a warning. And now if we focus in P&L structure, here we have first revenue broken down by markets. This is clear. Then we have project direct costs. These are costs that are inevitably for us to deliver our services. Actually, these are costs of services sold. In other words, these are costs that we can allocate to one or more specific projects. Content-wise, these are mainly salaries of developers, contractual and employed. And then besides salaries, we can also have some minor other types of costs of services sold, such as training costs, maybe some business trips, meetings, or any other type of costs which on one hand were needed for delivering our services, and on the other hand which we can allocate to one or more projects. And now if we deduct project direct costs from revenue, we get margin, profit margin. And this should be the first KPI we look at when we monitor the performance of individual project. In essence, each project should be in long-term positive at this level. It means it should create some margin in order to make a contribution to covering operating expenses. Further down, all items are pretty standard, so I don't think I have to explain a lot. Here we have OPEX, operating expenses, and all the way down to earnings before taxes. What is worth mentioning are these 2 columns here, variance to previous year in absolute values and in percentages. These 2 columns are shown also visually. This way we can immediately notice any important and big variations. For example, here we can see that our revenue grew a lot and that this is mainly due to higher revenue in EU market, also due to higher revenue in domestic market, but not so much in USA. Then we can also see that our margin grew more than operating expenses, which means that we are on a good way to increase our profit. So I hope here everything is clear. So now let's go back to dashboard and explain it. Here we can see only key P&L items which we saw earlier in whole P&L, with one difference, that here all values are shown visually. Not only variances but also actual and previous year. These light gray bars represent positive value and results, while these dark bars represent deductions. With variances is the same logic as earlier before, so I will not lose time here. And here we have one additional information about percentage EBIT in revenue, actual versus previous year, and we can see that it fell. Okay, now it's time to slowly go a bit further and look at the margin by departments and projects, which is shown in these two charts. Here we have those 4 blue departments, if you remember from organization chart, and we can see that 2 of them performed much better than previous year, 1 performed 8% better, and 1 performed worse. Here we have the same KPI, margin, but by projects. They are sorted by the height of margin generated this year, and we can immediately see which of them performed better, this green, and which of them performed worse, this red. Besides, we can also instantly see which of them generated negative margin, which is alarming. And now, before we dive deeper into departments and projects, let's just keep in mind, for example, Hera, where margin fell. Let's find out why and go here directly to the next part of the report. Here we have a detailed overview of margin by departments and projects. Let me first remind you that this report is dynamic. Here you can choose departments, here the period, and here type of calculation, monthly or year to date. And let's say that we now want to see monthly results for Hera and choose here monthly. What happens is the same as earlier in dashboard. The title changes so that we always know which data we are looking at. The comment changes, and of course all charts change. But we said we want to find out why margin fell 8% year to date, so let's go back to year to date data. Okay, what happened at Hera? We see that revenue grew 6%, 12% in domestic market and a fall in other markets. But on which projects? That we can see here. 6% growth actual versus previous year. But Kos, Andros and Karpathos grew, while Corfu and Ikaria fell. And the margin? It fell 8% due to too big increase in salaries. But on which projects? Here we see again Corfu and Ikaria and even Karpathos. And not only did margin in absolute values fell, but also in percentage of revenue. So now let's look at this Corfu and Ikaria a bit closer. Here we can choose a project within Hera which we want to dive in deeper. Corfu is already selected, and we can see that revenue started falling already in previous year and is still falling. Obviously the same is happening with margin, but in even greater extent. If we look, for example, only in July, revenue fell 66%, whereas margin 161%. However, on a year-to-date basis, revenue fell 73% and project direct costs only 17%. And if we quickly look also at Ikaria, we can see that story here is quite similar to Corfu. Revenue started falling already in last year, and margin as well. On a cumulative basis, we can see even that the fall in revenue was followed by increase in costs. This is unimaginable and requires further investigation. At the moment, based on this info that we have, we can conclude that management is acting too slow because the fall in revenue is not followed with sufficient enough fall in costs. But we in our report will stop here. although in reality this is where action begins. The content behind these numbers needs to be found and action is to be taken. With this, we are almost at the end of our report, but to get a comprehensive picture of the performance of this company, we shouldn't overlook operating expenses. So let's go back to dashboard to look at it. Here we are back at dashboard and we can see that OPEX grew 26% compared to previous year. Here we have top 5 cost types with values actual, previous and variance. And here we have a percentage of each OPEX type in revenue. And now let's jump directly to OPEX in detail. If you remember from organization chart, we had 3 orange departments which were cost centers. These 3 departments are here already chosen, general, management, operations. But of course we can choose any department we are interested in. Let's say we choose management. Here we see the total OPEX grew 35% and that percentage of total OPEX of management in revenue grew 17%. 2 of the biggest types of costs at management are salaries, which grew 33%, and consulting, which grew 28%. Further down, one last thing is overview of OPEX over months. Here in total, here by departments, and here by cost type. I think this is clear and I don't have to explain it further. What I would like to point out at the end is how this report is built. If you are wondering about stability of this report and how to maintain it, or most of all how to update it, you should know that this report was built using Power Query and Power Pivot. I will just quickly show you the data model so that you get a brief feeling of how it is built. Let's switch to diagram view. This is my fact table with general ledger data and calculated measures. This is my calendar, and all other tables are dim tables, actually code lists. Reports built this way are robust, stable, and easy to update. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and found it useful. If so, please give it a thumb up and maybe share it with your friends. You're also welcome to visit our website www.sesh-reporting.com. Thanks for watching. Bye!